Welcome to the Healthy Families NZ Systems Change in Action webinar. Today we've got Healthy Families East Cape taking us through the Neighbourhood Play System Prototype. So I'll hand over to the team who will take us through the presentation and open the webinar for us. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou, hei timatanga I tēnei wahanga o tō tātou nei rangi. He paku karakia, hautoto, ka tūheke ana, ka rongo heke ana ki te ngā hau o tū. I taina taku kawa nei he kawa tua maunga, ka wiwini kawa wana tāra patatū ki te rangi, haumi e hui e, tai ki. He wiwi Ngāti, no porau rangi, hei wi moke, no ai apu, no whanau ke nā, no hikurangi, he wiwi, he Ngāti, he whanoke. I te taha o tōku māma, ko marotiri te maunga, ko mga hauni te awa, ko te whānau arua taupare te hapu, ko Ngāti porau te iwi. I tēnei rekereke oku, I te taha o tōku pāpā, ko hikurangi te maunga, ko waiapu te awa, ko Ngāti rangi te hapu, ko Ngāti ue pōhatu te iwi. I te timatanga o tēnei tau, I timatau ki konei ki Healthy Families East Cape. Ko tōku ingoa ko tō Mairangi Higgins, ko au tētahi o ngā kaiwhakahaere practice leads o tēnei wahanga o tātou ki roto I te Tairāwhiti. I marina au I tōku mākau, ko James Higgins, hei te mutunga o tēnei tau I te timatanga o te tau I heke mai nei, ka whānau mai tō tātou PP tuatahi, te pōtiki whakarakaraka o tō tātou nei whānau. Nō reira he mihi ka tika tēnei kia tātou katoa. I tipu ake au ki roto o Ruatoria, I roto anō hoki te ākau o Tokomaru, I kuraina au ki roto I te kura kaupapa, te kura tuatahi, te whare kura, anā hoki ki roto I te whare wānanga. I te taurua mano te kaumāwaru, I whakatūtuki au I toku tohu pai rua, ki te whare wānanga o Waikato. He Masters of Arts in Māori and Indigenous Studies. Nō reira, hei tautoko I tēnei o aku nei tūranga, I tēnei o nei mahi, me mihi ka tika ki tēnei taha oku, ki roto I te mātauranga Māori. Arā hoki, me mihi ka tika ki te mana whenua o konei ki roto I te Tairāwhiti. Kia koutou rā rongo whakaata, Ngāti Maru, ngai tāwhiri, Ngāti Kaipoho, ngā whakatinanatanga o rā tauma, e kore nei ngā mihi e ea. Ki ngā tamariki, ngā whānau, ngā kaiako, me te tumuaki a Gina, ki te kura tuatahi o Cobham, nā koutou tēnei kaupapa I whakatinana, I hāpai, I paihere, hei oranga mo ngā uri whakatipu. Nō reira, e tipu mātoro ki te ao. Nau mai e te iwi ki tēnei o a tātou whakatiranga. Healthy Families East Cape would like to acknowledge the kaupapa that have already been presented before us. To those of Healthy Families in Invercargill and South Auckland, tēnei mai te Tairāwhiti ka mihi. Healthy Families New Zealand Systems Change in Action webinars, harnessing collective impact to bring community change. The Systems Change in Action webinar series aims to explore locally led initiatives designed to improve the health, well-being of our communities, our hapori, across Aotearoa. We aim to provide you with an overview of our Healthy Families New Zealand approach and the systems thinking that we share, the showcase systems change in action at our local level. This is a chance for you to deepen your understanding of systems change, learn new insights, and think about ways to become more effective in the mahi we all aspire to be able to do for our whānau, and as a movement of collective change. It is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Anna Tolich, the Regional Play Systems Lead. Her role is a partnership co-funded between Healthy Families East Cape and Sport Gisborne Tairāwhiti. Anna has been a part of our team since 2020 with an explicit focus on elevating the opportunities for play in Te Tairāwhiti. Anna has led the Neighbourhood Play Systems Prototype since 2021 with the tamariki of Cobham School in Elgin. No reira, no mai Anna.
Kia ora. Thank you for that amazing welcome to mai. Ko ngā kōhatuhu whakara karaka o tamatia pōkai whenua, ko Waimakariri te awa, e tipu ake o ke o te tahi, no tamaki makaurau ahau, ko te Tairāwhiti toko kāinga nei, ko Anna Tolich toko ingoa, ke Healthy Families East Cape, me Sport Gisborne Tairāwhiti ahau e mahi ana, ko au te kai whakamana tākaro mō te rohi o te Tairāwhiti, no reira, tina koutou, tina katoa. So thank you very much for everyone joining us on our Systems Change in Action webinar today. We'll explore the Neighbourhood Play System, and we have a special welcome to kick off this webinar. I'll just share my screen. Welcome to our neighbourhood and all our So this webinar today is exploring the amazing cool ideas from the tamariki here of Cobham School. Just jump into my presentation. So we were lucky enough to be chosen as part of this, the Neighbourhood Play System, and testing out all those initiatives. Which is why I'm like, Canva. Sorry, I'm not the cheeky person. I got asked to do the video at the last minute. One more second. There we go. All good? Oh, good. Cool. So thank you for that introduction, Tomai. I'll just share my screen. Second there. Oh, good. Okay. So as I said, I grew up in Christchurch, and my most epic play memory is the summer of soil. So we grew up on outskirts of town, and there was big farmland around us, and then one summer that all changed and became subdivision, and during that construction process there was a 2 to 3 story huge pile of soil just over the back fence from us, and all the neighbourhood children came together and spent the whole summer playing there with a whole lot of imaginary play and wars and all kinds of things happening, and we were there from dawn till dusk. There were no parents, there was lots of risky play, and I feel like that kind of have this kind of thinking in the back of my head that our play memories really shape our journey going forward, and I've been lucky enough to keep on playing through all of my career right now to the Regional Play Systems lead. So I studied geography and then landscape architecture, and according to my kids I now have the best job in the world as the play person here, upholding the mana of tākaro in te Tairāwhiti. Right. Next slide. Yep. So before we jump into what a neighbourhood play system is, I would like you to all indulge me for a moment and close your eyes. And I would like you to go back to your most epic play memory. So just think back to that one epic day in your childhood. Think about where you are. Think about all the smells and sounds that are around you. Think about who's there with you. Is it the neighbours? Is it your cousins? Is it family? Think about what you're doing, and just take a moment to really be back in that play memory and all the fun that you were having. And I can pretty much guarantee that you're outside in nature with your neighbours and cousins and family. There's no adults around, and you're probably doing something really risky. So if you all open your eyes now, and if you happen to have a pen and paper next to you, I would love for you to write down that play memory. It's going to be something that we will come back to in this presentation. And if you can pop that play memory in the chat as well, it'd be great to capture all the cool stuff that you did. Don't worry, I won't report you if it was risky. So we all had an amazing play memory. I'm sure that we were all roaming around on bikes. With friends out till dusk to dawn, not till the lights came back on again. But that's not the play reality for our tamariki today. Play is under threat. Our children don't get to roam as much as we used to, and they don't get the time, the space and permission to play like we did. So we're kind of the end of that golden era of play. So in terms of time, our children tamariki are really highly structured. they have to go, usually they've got some sport or other activity after school, or our parents are working 2 to 3 jobs and don't have that time to play with their kids or to take them to other playful opportunities. In terms of space, as we'll see through this presentation, a lot of our tamariki don't have access to places to play. There's no playground in the suburb that we're about to have a look at. Schools are now locked up and children can't go and visit them. And you'll see through a whole lot of pure urban design layers that there's not much space for our tamariki to play. We were probably one of your play memories was playing on the street with your neighbourhood friends. That doesn't happen anymore. And also in terms of permission, there's a lot of places that children aren't allowed to roam anymore. They're not allowed to head down to the shops by themselves. They're not allowed to go and see the neighbourhood kids. And there's also a lot of out-of-bound areas where kids can't go. So with my landscape architecture background and being Croatian, I see things in talking with hands and seeing things in lots of layers. So where we've got to now is a whole lot of core urban design decisions that have got to this, as well as a whole lot of influences internationally as well. So the Neighbourhood Play System Prototype was a model that was designed through a partnership between Sport New Zealand, Gisborne Tairāwhiti and ARIP, which is an international urban design firm. So they wanted to create a model that would capture what is the place efficiency of a neighbourhood. Place efficiency is quite a clunky word, but it wants to capture how much play is there in a neighbourhood. In other words, is play the same level that we had growing up compared to now? So that model, they went out to a lot of regional sports trusts, asked who would be interested in testing out this model, and we were lucky enough, Healthy Families East Cape, Sport Gisborne Tairāwhiti were lucky enough to be chosen, along with Sport Bay of Plenty and Active Southland. So the neighbourhood play system model that we were presented looked like this, a very complex model, and the whole idea of it was to identify a school and look at the neighbourhood footprint around that school, and capture all the levels of place efficiency there through a desktop analysis, looking at the school level, the neighbourhood community level, and then the city level. Once you had that desktop analysis, it was about going out to the community and the school and gathering that real on the ground information, building up a report that then could be activated. So this is what we were presented with to test what a neighbourhood play system model is. But in reality, this is what a neighbourhood play system was for us. It was about developing that whanaungatanga, getting to know the tamariki of our school, and just getting around a piece of brown paper with some pens and understanding the day-to-day reality of play in their neighbourhood. Also, what you didn't see in that model was that we flipped it with our neighbourhood play system, and it's a real radical approach that we took, that we placed the key play stakeholders, our tamariki, at the centre of this design process. And so we're going to walk you through what that looks like when you put them at the centre of the design process, and then how that goes through forward. So we're still in the testing phase because we're one of the initial cohorts. So we're still learning as we're doing this and what it looks like. And these neighbourhood play systems are now being rolled out across the country. So putting the tamariki at the centre of the design process reminded of this as of this whakatauki, te tamariki tana mahahi wa hawahi taha. It is the job of the children to smash the calabash. So what does it look like when you get children start breaking boundaries, elevating their voices, and testing systems change that way? The school that we were lucky enough to work with is Cobham School. So just to give you a little idea of the school, it's known as the little school with the big heart, and it's located in the suburb of Elgin. So where the three rivers meet there, that's our town centre. So Elgin is located to the west of that. To the north of it, we've got the state highway and residential housing. To the south, we have our large industrial zone and all our amazing surf beaches. We're also lucky enough to have in that area a new swimming pool that's being built. We've just opened a brand new skate park and pump track, and we also have an off-road cycle network. And then to the west, we have Gisborne Airport, rugby park, and 2 golf courses. So taking a bird's eye view of Cobham School, it looks ideally placed to access a whole range of amazing play infrastructure and assets. But the reality on the ground is that the suburb of Elgin is known as the play desert. It doesn't have a full publicly accessible playground. So you can see in the picture there, they have a set of swings, and at the time of taking this picture there was actually no swings attached, they'd gone, so they've got a set of swingless swings and they had a spinner, and that was all that was available for the whole suburb to play in. There was also some basketball courts located within Blackpool Park, which will be part of the study area that we'll talk about. So known as the play desert, but there's some amazing play champions within this suburb. So the top picture there is a group, community group that took it upon themselves to build their own playground. So they managed to find these old pieces of equipment and put them in a cul-de-sac. But unfortunately, council said this wasn't appropriate due to health and safety, and it had to be removed. We also have another amazing group called equitable. We helped to backbone and support them on an LTP submission on the play desert and the need for a playground. And part of the resolution with that from council was that we would work with equitable to gather play insights and information and report back to them on looking at how we can develop play across that suburb. And this report formed part of that. Also, equitable have been successful in Te Manawa funding and have just gained a play trailer, and that will be used to test out a whole lot of green spaces across Elgin to see where we can activate play the most. But we also have the most amazing play champion, and that is the principal of Cobham School, Gina Lean. Gina loves to dress up at any opportunity. This picture here is her during lockdown. Every day she would dress up as a different book character and then reads those stories to the tamariki. She's so supportive of play, and she supports anything that puts the school at the heart of the community. So at the time of undertaking this study, there were 44 pupils in this Decile 1 school with a high percentage of Māori. This was also one of our Manawakura schools here at Sport Gisborne Tairāwhiti. They have the healthy active learning approach, which is looking at physical education and nutrition. So we already had that relationship in there through our Manawakura team. And they have a te waharo approach to this, taking the model of te whare tapawhā and the idea of how do we manaki our tamariki as they leave home on their journey to school so they're ready to learn. So we already had that relationship that we could leverage off, and Healthy Families East Cape had also done some play surveys with this tamariki in the past, so leveraging off those relationships that we had already formed. So the first part of the process was gathering all the data that we had on the suburb. So we placed a what's called a 20-minute neighbourhood catchment over Cobham School. We placed the school at the heart and then looked at the neighbourhood around that. So the 20-minute neighbourhood idea is that journey from 10 minutes from a school or a home and 10 minutes back again, so that return journey. So once we had mapped out our catchment, we were lucky enough to have support from Gisborne District Council, and they gave us access to all of their GIS data. We took this GIS data and then put it into Photoshop so that we could then create our own maps. So again, having all those layers of data, we could turn on and off things that you don't usually see together in a map, and to really get an understanding of what is on the ground in terms of assets and what isn't. So the Neighbourhood Play System looked at mapping out 4 layers, understanding all that built environment and the assets, how people get around, and also how people enjoy that space. And that would give us a really good picture of this place efficiency of that neighbourhood. So I really like this map here because we've placed the school at the heart, and you can automatically see that there's not a lot of free access for our tamariki to get around, and also not a lot of places to play. So the red lines are our busy roads, and they cut the suburb into quarters. So north-south, you've got traffic coming from the state highway down to the industrial zones. You've got a lot of logging trucks and commercial vehicles. And east-west, you've got a lot of traffic going to the airport. At the heart of those crossroads, we have Elgin Shops, which is the biggest set of shops that service the community. And then we've also got the purple areas. Those are areas areas that are unsafe. So we've got a lot of dog reports, crashes and things like that. And then we've also got the industrial zone down the bottom, which is quite impermeable. You'll see Gisborne Airport there. The suburb of Elgin is the gateway to the airport. We've got Te Kuri Tuatai Marae just out of the catchment there. There's also another school in this catchment, Elgin School. We were originally wanting to do 2 schools as part of this test case, but we were encouraged just to focus on one because we were one of the pilots. And the idea is that we will then do Alban School next and build up this neighbourhood play system within, and then a next school and the next school, and the hope that a neighbourhood play system will be internet connected across the whole city. But probably the most interesting thing here is the rail corridors, which are quite the dark green lines there. So the top line is an abandoned rail corridor. It comes from out in the country and connects to the rail corridor that you see with the dotted lines that go straight into the city and the port. That's an intermittently used rail corridor, maybe 4 times a year for a heritage rail. So you've really got 2 big green spaces, like big crocodile jaws with the school right in the middle of it, that aren't used a lot. So you can see from this map that the tamariki of Cobham School are quite trapped either in their school or in their backyards for play. And right off at the bottom, right-hand corner, we can see the off-road cycle network, which is not connected to this town. So this gives us the data and an understanding of the assets and infrastructure for this case study. But what we really needed to do was get on the ground and see it for ourselves and get a feeling for those spaces. So this is when we started to do some site visits. So we jumped on the bus and followed the route through that goes through Elgin, and to see how often it goes and where it goes. And then we jumped out and started looking at all the spaces in the catchment. So you can see here the abandoned rail corridor. This goes right past the school. It's a very large corridor. It sometimes has horses in it. It's got a lot of weeds and rubbish and really uncared for. You can see a photo there of the busy logging trucks. These go right past the school at 50 kilometres an hour, and a lot of other commercial vehicles, and they're quite loud and noisy. We have a photo there of the Elgin shops. There's only 2 seats there for the community to sit on. There's no other gathering space. We also mapped out street trees. There's only 1 street in the suburb with street trees, street lights and seating and other infrastructure, and to get a feeling for this space. And also we have just in the bottom there, the Awa. So this is Reynolds Creek Drain, which runs from Blackpool Park, which is the park neighbouring the school, through the industrial zone, and which reaches Waikanae Stream to the sea. It's quite a polluted Awa. So we're starting to get a bit of a feel of what the data looks like on the ground. But to really start making sense of all these layers, we really needed to see what the day-to-day reality is for the tamariki through their eyes. So we originally were to run 1 play shop with the tamariki, but we felt that for us the most important thing was building that whanaungatanga and those relationships, to create that safe space for them to be a bit vulnerable and really let us know what it is like to play in their neighbourhood. So we divided it up into 3 workshops over 3 weeks, and we leveraged off that Manawakura relationship, and we went in during these sessions with the Manawakura lead. The Manawakura lead, he implanted this idea about the whole kaupapa of the project with the tamariki, this idea of legacy, that this project and the ideas that they come up with will be their legacy for the neighbourhood, something that they can come and visit when they're older, and also bring their children back as well. So that really showed them the importance of what we were trying to achieve. So the first workshop was really just to get to know everybody. Every time we did a workshop, we'd come dressed up. We'd come in with the icebreaker warm-up. For this workshop, we did Zumba, and we'd always bring lots of healthy kai to share at the end. So the first play shop was to know, how do you like to play? So we asked the children just to draw pictures for us. And from these pictures of how they like to play, we learned that it's always with their whānau and their pets. They like to play at places outside of the catchment zone, so adventure playground or at the beach. And play was a really special fun time for them. Then we asked them to craft their favourite play spaces, and they had lots of fun exploring that as well. And then finally on that day, we asked them to let us know through an emoji board, how does play make them feel? And usually you think everyone would have a sticky dot on the happy, but actually there was a lot of worried, scared and angry responses to this. A lot of the tamariki are told to just get out and go and play. It could be at any time of the day and night. They're scared of the dark. There are places that they don't like to go. They feel unsafe in the park. They're not allowed to roam. So we got a whole lot of starting to unpack all the different feelings of play in their neighbourhood. The second play shop was, where do you like to play? So now we know how they like to play. We had to start understanding geographically, where is this? So again, we came in dressed up. We did some giant bubble fun as a warm-up. And then we asked them to do some mind maps of their journey from their home to school. And we asked them to capture everything along the way. So what we learned from this workshop was that actually most of the tamariki live right around the school, and some of them even have gates into the school, and the school is their safe space that they like to go. And a lot of them talked about going into the school, even though it's locked and out of hours, to just lie on the grass because it's the only quiet space that they could find. So that was really interesting. We also got them to do an aerial mapping exercise. So throughout this whole process, we were lucky to have access to all of the students of the school. The senior students found it surprisingly really hard to locate their homes and school on the aerial map, but our younger tamariki were totally fine with that. So that was interesting. And then through the images of our site visit, we put all those up and asked them to rank them of where they like to play. They're quite parochial. They don't like to go and play at there's a new playground at one of the schools. They don't go there because that's not their hood. They told us that they would love to play at near the shops, but they're not allowed to go there. They'd like to play at the hour, but it's not clean enough. So we just learned where they are and are not playing and started to map that out. The third play shop, the neighbourhood walk, that was the real penny drop moment for us. That's when we realised that we had to have the tamariki at the centre of this process to really understand not only the neighbourhood through their eyes, but to help us design it as well through their eyes. So what we asked them to do was to take us on a neighbourhood walk all the way around in the catchment. And to do this, I first took them on what urban design is, to get them all geared up into being urban designers. So on a whiteboard, I drew a river with 2 riverbanks, and in the river, a whole lot of sharks and crocodiles. I drew them on one side, and I drew their house on the other. And I asked them, so how are you going to get over to the river safely? And they came up with rafts and bridges. And I said, okay, look, there's no budget. You can go Disneyland crazy. Let's think of some cool ideas. And that's when they really put their thinking caps on. And we had catapults and roller coasters and all kinds of flying foxes. And I said, great, you're now creatively urban design fixing this problem, and you're urban designers. We're going to go out into the neighbourhood. So we took some love heart pictures, and they would show us places that they love to play. We also had a Band-Aid picture. If they found a place that was broken and needed fixing, we would take a photo, and then they had to urban design fix that on the spot. So come up with some ideas and opportunities for fixing that. So to test them out, to see if they were ready to do this, we jumped out into the playground and they walked us around the playground. It's a really big playground at Cobham School. The Ministry of Education is keen to take some of that land off the school if it's not activated. So they walked us around the spaces that they like to use. Like there's some wild nature areas that they like to hide in, but they mostly gravitated to this playground, which is desperate need of repair. There was quite a lot of Band-Aids on the broken wood and how they would fix it, and some ideas there. So we knew they were ready to be able to go out into the neighbourhood and explore this a bit more. So they really liked the idea of having, because they use the space a lot in their spare time, they started generating these ideas of more trees, fruit trees and flowers, and developing an idea of a community play space where everyone can come together. And this kind of started this idea of papatakaro, or school ground play, a playground that's open to all of the community, and that's something that they would have liked to see. So then we headed off down the alleyway out the school to Munro Street. A lot of the kids told us and pointed out which house they lived on, but they're not allowed to go and visit each other along that street. Their parents don't allow them to roam. They're fearful of dogs and fast cars and things like that in the neighbourhood. So even though they live on the same street, they're not allowed to go visit. The tamariki told us about the broken footpaths that they can't scooter along, those footpaths, and of course the roaming dogs. So we got them to urban design fix some solutions for this, and they wanted the footpaths fixed and wide enough so they can scooter along together. They had this great idea of 100 trees on their street, and probably my favourite quote from one little girl was, "I want a tree with my name on it." And this idea that she could plant this tree and it would always be there for her with her name on it, and she could watch it grow. So that idea and that sense of having a sense of a bit of ownership over that tree and of that space and of her neighbourhood. They also wanted to slow the traffic down on that street. So this was this idea of developing Te Ara Tākaro, this idea of play on the way. They wanted a new sign, a te waharoa above their gateways that would welcome them into their school, and that idea of manakiing them from their home to the school journey so they are ready to learn. The third stop we had was in Blackpool Park, and the kids were automatically drawn to the awa. They don't like to go to the park too much because it's boring, but they're also not allowed to go there because their parents don't feel that it's safe. And it's boring because there's nothing to play on, but they love the awa. They do go there with their friends and parents when they're allowed to. There are eel and tuna in the stream that they love. They love to watch them fly, as this little girl said, but they don't like all the rubbish that's in there, and that made them quite sad. So they had some cool ideas here of replanting the stream, taking all the rubbish out. They wanted to increase the plants, the tuna and the water. And when we asked them who would undertake this mahi, they opened their arms wide and said they would do it. They wanted, again, to get in there and start doing that mahi themselves. So this was this idea of tākaro taio, or nature play, and looking at how we could start restoring this creek. The fourth stop was the Algon shops. So there's no pedestrian crossing to the shop in any direction. The children aren't allowed again to roam here by themselves because of the busy cars and their dogs on the loose. They had some cool ideas here of just having pedestrian crossing, a stop-go sign just for children, and there's a really big car park in the back of these shops that the kids wanted to activate through play. They had this idea of grassing it all over and just having some loose parts play stuff there for them to play on, and this idea of gathering all the community together in a safe space. So this started this idea of tākaro hapori, or village play, a place where everyone can come together. And then our final stop was the rail corridor that borders their school. So this is a really large corridor that usually has horses in it, quite a lot of rubbish, a lot of the kids, there's always prickles and weeds. They don't feel safe playing in there either. And they like the idea of taking the bushes down and having a really big wide pathway somewhere they could scooter off-road. So this idea of active transport corridor that would connect them right up into town. But they also, now that the urban designers had this great idea of reflecting the heritage of the rail, and they wanted a big train that they could play on. So that great idea to keep that story going there. So this was the Te Ara Tākaro, or the play corridors, and this idea of an active transport corridor that would connect them up to not only the other bike track, off-road cycle track, but right into town. So these 5 key opportunities that Te Tamariki identified in these spaces with our Papa Tākaro school ground play. So this idea of a community space where everyone could come and play, because as we know there's no playground for the suburb. This could have kiarahi, manahupara, more basketball courts, pump track, a stage, anything like that to bring the community together and safely play. And they have the space for something like that to happen. Their other idea of play on the way, the 100 trees on a street, naming trees so that they can see the growth in their neighbourhood and taking the sense of ownership over that. There's also telling pūrākau through stencils, so the idea of manakiing them on their way to their journey to school, and seating. And also, as Algon is the gateway to the city, you could broaden that idea with the te waharoa that is at their school to the idea of Algon being the te waharoa, the gateway welcoming to all people that come through that suburb. So there's an idea for sculpture throughout the streets of that neighbourhood. Tākaro taio and the nature play, we talked about restoring the awa. That was an awesome project that could connect right up into the stream through replanting. The Tākaro hapori was a village play, really activating that space as a key gathering space. It could also become a place for farmers markets and other community gatherings. Free Wi-Fi, little stage for the rangatahi to do the TikToks, just a space where everyone can gather in and feel like a community. And the final one, the active transport corridor that will connect them right up with the rest of the network and all the amazing assets just outside of the catchment zone. So the opportunities map for this is actually quite simple. So we've got our Papa Tākaro right at the centre, so keeping the school right at the centre of the community. We've got our play on the way through our stencils and our street trees, the idea of replanting the awa and connecting that up to the broader network, and our village play there with the shops. But probably the most important one is that active transport corridor and connecting them back up to the city. So that's where we got to with our report, and it's exciting to say that the tamariki are starting to activate some of these ideas. So in terms of Tākaro Kaio, they've already planted with the community 2,000 plants along Reynolds Drain through Enviro Schools. Enviro Schools teachers have given them the challenge of finding the original name of Reynolds Creek Drain, the awa, and restoring the mana there, and helping to, with all the community, to replant that. So we did the planting day there. The kids all knew exactly which tree was there, so they could come back and look after it. And from that's developed the idea of a gardening group. And we're going to help them get some gardening equipment, and they will be part of their curriculum and going down and looking after this awa. And we've also taken this report to Gisborne District Council. So as part of the resolution for the long-term district plan, we presented at the Operations Committee. It was really well received. It was just before election time, so there were a lot of gushy words, but we'll take that. But it was awesome just to elevate our tamariki's voices up into that council system, and to see just how important they are as the key place stakeholders for their neighbourhood and in designing their neighbourhood. And straight after the meeting, we were told that they were going to go start checking the footpaths and street trees and lights, so things were automatically going to start happening. So in terms of our next steps, as this was a prototype with the tamariki, our next steps will be appropriate hapu iwi engagement going forward, and hopefully developing some partnerships through those areas and the 5 opportunities. COVID has really slowed the process down, and it only has allowed us to engage with the tamariki at present. But in a way, it's allowed us to flip the model, and we really like that a place to keep the tamariki at the centre. So now it's about expanding that consultation net to the wider school whānau and staff, community groups and shop owners and others that live in the area. We proposed the idea when we did the presentation to council of this idea of an ice cream test with the mayor and the new councillors. You get a good level of place efficiency of a neighbourhood if you can walk from your home, buy an ice cream and walk back, so you're allowed to roam, B, you can go get the ice cream, and if you can get back in time before it melts, then you've got a really good place efficiency level in your neighbourhood. So we'd love to do that with the tamariki leading the mayor and councillors on that walk, so that they can really see the day-to-day reality for them. There's some exciting things happening in the active transport corridor. That will be that's an iwi-led project. So it just seems to be a perfect storm of people wrapping around the ideas that the tamariki have identified. So there's exciting things in that space, but that will need the formation of an Algan Tākaro Kaitiaki Raupu. And that's an interesting one because usually it's a lot of bunch of adults and stakeholders at the top. So we're at the moment thinking, how does it look when the tamariki are in that group, and how do we support them? We explore some of these opportunities through Te Manawa funding, and the big aim is to get all of this into the long-term plan and hopefully get a whole lot more play woven into the urban fabric of this suburb. Just taking a moment to go back to your play memory that you've remembered, and just to give you a little challenge of how will you be able to activate that play memory in your neighbourhood today, and how would you do that with a tamariki in your neighbourhood, and to make play an everywhere activity from your letterbox right out into your neighbourhood. So kia ora, thank you for listening to the Neighbourhood Play System and our testing of it today, and we're happy to take any partai. I'll just open up the chat and see if you've got any questions.
So there is a question from Kathy in the chat just asking how many people were on your team for this mahi?
So we had the, luckily I had a student helper with us over the summer, which was awesome. Definitely need that. So just to do all that amazing Photoshop. Of course, we had all our amazing team at Healthy Families East Cape, and we had great relationships in council, and we bounced a lot of ideas off with our other everybody else who's testing out this phase. But in all reality, it was probably 2 people with a lot of great support around us.
It looked like a lot of work for a small team. I was particularly interested in how you did the mapping, because like, who did that, and can you teach me, because it looks amazing.
That's me with my landscape architecture hat on. So I always think in layers. So yeah, putting it into Photoshop was actually quite easy. And then once it's in there, you've always got all those layers in there that you can always go back and turn layers on and off. It is quite a simple thing to do, but if you can just get that GIS data from your council, then you're away. It's just a lot of colour boxes on a map.
That's all. No worries. I'll get onto Photoshop. Thanks.
Are there any other questions from the group?
There's another one from Hannah Griffin in the chat.
Oh, sorry, I might have missed it. And I'll just go up. Oh, can you see it, Scylla? Are you able to read it out?
Yeah. Kia ora. It says, were there areas where it was difficult to find relevant or up-to-date data? How did you approach any gaps in the data?
And because we were on quite a time frame, we just had to roll with what we had. So there's always going to be gaps in the data. It's such a good question. And I think it's just acknowledging that you find them and then hoping that you can come back and fill them in as you go. And that's all about all those connections that you find as you're going on. And that's the great thing about having everything mapped out in Photoshop. You can always add another layer and another layer, and it's always just going to keep getting richer.
She also asked what supported the project to get buy-in across different people and organisations.
I think once you turn the play button on in someone and connect them with their memory, then you've got them. You've connected back to how important play is. And then it's the voices of the tamariki. Who's going to say no? And that's the most cool thing about this project is once you start leveraging their voices and getting people to hear their stories and seeing it through their eyes, you got them.
I've just got a question as well. I know you talked about how COVID had slowed things down a bit, but it'd be good to hear where the project's at now. And also you talked about like the commitment from council, and I noticed in your opportunities you'd mentioned a submission on the long-term plan. So is there, I guess, yeah, 2 questions. Where are we at now? And also what is the commitment or authentic commitment from council going forward, you know, next year, 2 years, 5 years?
Yeah. So yeah, so we're ready to go to the next stage and start talking to the broader community. So in a way, it's kind of jumping in 2 different ways, taking it to council, publicise it and put it out into everyone to see when we hadn't quite done all the other engagements. So a little bit of that catching up, that COVID's disrupted things and we're having to catch up with everybody. But that's okay, because I just love the way that COVID totally slowed the process down for us. We almost, in a way, just did it at our own way at the Tamariki's pace. That was awesome. And in terms of council, definitely a lot of great gushy words on the day. With the elections coming up, and I do feel like there is definitely going to be buy-in. It's a matter of getting back in front of those new councillors again and just keeping those relationships going. We've got a great relationship with Gisborne District Council, and it's just bringing all those other stakeholders together and keeping it going forward with the road move.
Thank you. What sort of commitment are you looking for if you submit in the long-term plan? Are there specifics you'll be asking for to be highlighted in the plan?
Well, they were really interested in the active transport corridor, so it'd be amazing if that could happen. And But the great thing about was just talking about that play is not a playground. We don't want just a playground. The whole idea of the neighbourhood play system is there's almost this blanket of play across the city, and then connecting them with that suburb up. So I think they understood that, and they started talking about the idea of the system. So it's just having those conversations at every level of council with, you know, the roading team and the people who are doing footpaths, so they understand there has to be the right gradient for a scooter. Just turn that play button on every level. And in terms of the long-term plan, I think we can go for all of it.
Think big. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I'll ask Healthy Families East Cape to close the webinar for us.
I do have a question. Kia ora ana, kore pakaho, from the Healthy Families Waitakere team. Great presentation, thank you so much, and sort of newish to the play space. But my question, where is it now? I had like 4 or 5, but my question is kind of, now that you've done this mahi and you've had built the relationships and all of those things, what do you think in your mind would the children say? How do you think they would now define what the play and play system, or actually no, yes, so sorry. When you asked us about our experiences in play and having a look at the system now, how do we still encourage the ideas of jumping on the bare back of your horse? And like, I've seen some of what was written in there, so we still keep some of those things going. But you also brought up an example in your presentation how some of the parents or community leaders brought some resources together, but it wasn't deemed potentially safe. So there still seems to be like some balance between retaining some of the ways of playing that aren't structured, but also moving. Yeah, what do you think the children might say, the ones that you've worked with about that?
So we visited them yesterday just to get that little video snapshot, and in their classrooms they have all the 5 opportunities up on the wall, and they talk about them all the time. And one particular kid is always checking, right, when are we doing the next are we going to do this? So they've got a little checklist that they want to check, and I think it's just about as we socialise this idea more and bring in their whānau, get them to present to their whānau, and them to present, I'd love to have them present to council, and then using the amazing group Itu Algan with their play trailer to just start activating some of these spaces. And a lot of the fear in these spaces is actually invisible stuff that we've built up in our minds. So if we can start getting out there and activating that and getting the tamariki, who are the key stakeholders, they're the play champions, they know all about play, let's learn from them, and just keep getting them to lead us in that journey. I don't know where it's going to end, but it's pretty exciting. But I think just they know how to play. We've just need to reconnect with them again, and hopefully they'll be able to lead us on that way. But yes, they have a checklist and they will hold us to it.
That's awesome. Thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Any final questions? No. Thank you, Anna and the team, for an amazing and thoughtful, engaging presentation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and it certainly sparked my thinking in terms of where we are sitting in the play space and what future opportunities are, just not in Healthy Families NZ, but across all our play system partners. So thank you, and I'll hand back over to you to close the webinar for us.
Oh, papai, kia ora tātou. Just a mihi to you, Lucy and Silla, as well as our comms manager here, Ranui, who have supported Anna and I to be able to be here on this webinar. Like Anna said, we're not very much the tech kind of people, so we've had a little bit of nurturing this morning to get us this far. So he mihi ka tika kia koutou. I tautoko mai a mātou kia tū ki tēnei rā. And an awesome congratulations to you, Anna, for your amazing webinar today, representing us really well at Healthy Families East Cape, as well as Gisborne Tairāwhiti. And just a final mention to the tamariki and the whānau of Cobham Kura, who have really given us the honour to be able to work with them and create this on behalf of our whānau hapu and iwi. So hei whakamutu i tēnei wahanga o tātou, he karakia whakamutunga. Pau he hiko, pau ra rama, te aho i roto, marama i roto. Tēnei te pau ka au, tēnei te pau ka eke, tēnei te pau ka maia, ko te pau o tēnei whare, haumi e, hui e, thank you.
Thank you for listening to our story.